Welcome to the Leadership at Work Module 2 review. This is Part 2, Time Management. Time management is one of those workplace issues that we all seem to suffer from. Most of us have had some sort of training in time management, yet we're all plagued by ineffective use of our time. I love that quote down the bottom, "Time and tide wait for no man," and it's so true. It's one of the resources that we can't control, that we can't store or shelve. It just happens, and we need to be effective in the way we use it. So what we have to work on is using our time more effectively. And if we're going to be more effective in the way we use time, we have to plan. Let's look at planning and how we plan our time. But another quote to reinforce this ideology. "A stitch in time saves nine." What does that actually mean? It means if we put in a timely effort now, it will prevent more work at a later stage. So if we agree that this is true, why do we continue to be plagued by poor time management? Well, let's have a bit of a look at Dennis Pratt's permanent white water. We introduced that concept back in Module 1 in that we are in a constant state of change. Everything's moving. Because everything's constantly changing, everything's constantly moving, we tend to be in a constant state of reactivity. We're constantly reacting to what's moving in front of us. We're trying to keep up with the changes. We're trying to effectively calm that white water. It's a challenge that we simply can't get over. We simply can't defeat it. Let's have a look at another way that we can look at this idea. We're constantly fighting spot fires. It's a really stressful, really reactive way to work. And as a leader and manager, it can really set us down a path of ineffective performance. And it directly contravenes the 4 conditions of effective leadership that we established in Module 1. So when we talk about fighting spot fires, what are we actually meaning? What does it look like? And what are some of the things that cause spot fires? One of the most common issues that create spot fires is that as an organization and as individuals, we have unclear goals. We've talked about it several times already, but GAMs are one of those really crucial tools that can help us to clear up this problem. We suffer from cultural complacency. When we hear those statements like, "Oh, but we've always done it that way here. It's always worked before." Well, if it's worked before, it doesn't guarantee that it's going to work now or in the future. We've just said that we're in a constant state of change. Role ambiguity, which relates definitely to unclear goals, in that we don't have real clarity about our individual responsibilities and authority to make decisions. We don't understand the impact that we're having on our organization if we perform well, and conversely if we're not performing well. Perhaps culturally we have a lack of consultation through our senior team and flowing vertically down the organization. We base our decisions on assumptions and not facts. This is really critical and a real point of pain, particularly when we're going into problem-solving processes. We have a lack of contingency when things go wrong. Now, understanding that we can do hours of planning and things can crop up, things can happen that throw our planning out of whack. If we put in contingencies, we can still continue to move forward. Under or overestimation of our capacity to deliver on our goals is another really crucial mistake that we tend to make. If we don't put planning around capacity, we're walking a very tight line. All of this together can create this feeling of ad hoc decision making, reactive decision making. We need something to happen now. We're not quite sure what we need to do, but we need to make a decision. When you look at all of these things together, we create highly ineffective leadership. Now remember, leadership is not solely the domain of our CEO and our executives and our department managers. We all can be leaders in our own job, and we can all plan for good performance. Without effective planning, we're not firing up our organisation, we may in fact be burning it down. So let's start to get really focused on effective planning of time. But how do we do it? Well, you'll recall Covey's 4 quadrants of time management. Now, Stephen Covey, of course, is the author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Let's revisit those quadrants now. Quadrant 1, that activity that is both urgent and important. We tend to spend a lot of time in this quadrant. It's where we spend a lot of time fighting fires, and is a result, of course, of a lack of planning. Quadrant 2 is our important but less urgent phase. This is where we can do our planning and our leadership work. Quadrant 3 is our urgent but less important zone. Now, when I say less important, I mean less important to us and our responsibilities. This is where we get things thrown on our desk by our manager, by our CEO, or by our colleagues saying, I need you to do this right now. You know in yourself that it's not important to getting your job done, but it's important to somebody else. And of course, quadrant 4 is neither urgent nor important. This quadrant might be our social activity quadrant. It's also where we spend a lot of time checking, reading, and perhaps filing all those masses of emails that mean nothing to us. So if we have this really good structure, how do we convert that into something meaningful? Well, let's put it into a daily planner. There are many daily planners that you can get your hands on. I'm sure to some degree you're all using one, a diary or a planner, but using Covey's quadrants gives us an extra level of understanding. Let's have a look. So in this example, 8:30, we're going to spend our first hour focusing in that urgent and important quadrant. Our second hour is going to be focusing on that less urgent but important quadrant. And in this case, we're doing some recruitment planning for a new sales executive. Now, here's an important element of this example. We're actually leaving an hour open from 10:30 till 11:30 to give us that degree of flexibility. 11:30 is an urgent but less important hour. And in this case, we're going to have an open office that allows my staff to come and go, have conversations about performance, about feedback, and anything that's really important to them as opposed to me. 12:30 is lunch. Now in this example, I'm going to give us an hour. That's not always the case. And then we move through the day. Back to some quadrant 1 activities. Another blank hour that again gives us that degree of flexibility. Moving down and finishing with some planning at the end of the day. And in this case, we're actually planning for tomorrow. What I really like about setting up your daily planner this way is that you can refer your planner back to your GAMS documents. So each time you put in a quadrant and an action, you can relate it specifically to your GAMS, which gives you that really critical measurement of performance. It just makes sense. So in conclusion, if you want to effectively use your time, you need to forward plan. And using Covey's 4 quadrants gives you a really great framework to set yourself up so that you can really focus on effective time management. That brings us to the end of part 2 of module 2 review. Coming up, part 3, one of the most misunderstood and misused tools, delegation. We'll see you there.